Venezuela continues its preparations and campaigning ahead of the July 28th presidential election. In the United States, more than two-thirds of the voting population believes President Joe Biden should not seek re-election. And Palestinian social organizations denounced the Israeli occupation forces for the extermination of more than 500 entire families since October 7th. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Venezuela, the presidential candidate of the Great Patriotic Poll, Nicolás Maduro, was received by the people of the state of Carabobo in support of his electoral campaign for the July 28th presidential elections. With a large rally, the inhabitants of the city of Valencia raised slogans reaffirming their support to the candidacy of the current Venezuelan president and condemning the unilateral sanctions of the United States. In this sense, the candidate for the Great Patriotic Poll thanked the people for their unconditional support to defeat the actions of the extreme right wing and imperialism against national stability. Maduro also condemned the interest of the Venezuelan extreme right wing to come to power based on violence and hatred among the population.
Do you remember when they kidnapped you and locked you in your houses with violence? How many people they burned alive? How many young people they murdered in the Guarimbas? How many sufferings? And did Venezuela progress or did they hurt it with the Guarimbas? They only have ambitions and interests. Who asked for the sanctions against Venezuela? Who did the criminal damage with the sanctions against Venezuela? They themselves. The people are the same, the usual deceivers.
Pueblos son los mismos. Los engañadores de siempre.
But from Valencia I say to the oligarchy of the surnames and their puppets, don't get excited, you won't win.
In this context, in his tour through several territories of the country, the presidential candidate of the Great Patriotic Poll, Nicolás Maduro, was also received by the people of the state of Aragua in support of his electoral campaign for the presidential elections of next July 28th. With a great concentration, the inhabitants of the city of La Victoria expressed their support to the candidacy of the current Venezuelan president in the fight against the blockades imposed by the United States and its European allies. In this sense, President Maduro thanked the people for their support to defeat the actions of the extreme right wing and promised to continue working for the welfare of the nation.
Nobody is going to steal Venezuela. Nobody is going to hand over our country to foreigners. Nobody is going to bring fascism to Venezuela. You in the victory, do you want the Guarimbas and violence to return? They do.
Brazil's President Lula's statements that he hopes Venezuela quickly returns to Mercosur is being viewed as a positive step for regional integration. Our correspondent Brian Meyer has more.
Bolivia's entry to Mercosur with its president Luis Arce on Tuesday, Brazil's President Lula da Silva said that he hopes that Venezuela can also quickly return to the regional trading bloc. This marks another step forward in relations between the two neighbors, which were severely damaged after the 2016 parliamentary coup, reaching a low point during the Bolsonaro presidency.
There was a certain moment within the crisis between Brazil and Venezuela, during the Bolsonaro presidency that the possibility of invading Venezuela was seriously considered by the deep state in Washington under the leadership of Trump. This is on record. This was officially announced. And Bolsonaro offered to facilitate this. He even offered the use of Brazil's armed forces to pursue that goal.
Immediately after Lula took office in 2023, Brazil reopened its embassy in Venezuela. That May, President Maduro visited Brazil, and the two leaders agreed on a series of partnerships, including joint operations fighting drug smuggling on their 2,200-kilometer border. Although some recent comments made by Brazilian officials have caused tension in the Venezuelan government, relations between the two nations are expected to continue to improve after the July 28th presidential elections.
Brazil and Venezuela haven't reached the same level they used to have during the Chavez years. Of course, it's way better if you take as a benchmark what happened before Lula came into office. Of course, they have improved significantly.
Good relations between Brazil and Venezuela are fundamental for strengthening regional integration in Latin America. Brian Mir, teleSUR, Caracas.
On Friday, Argentina's National Institute of Statistics and Census Index will issue the inflationary data for June. It is estimated that the coming official figures will be alike to those in June, which showed a 4.2% inflation rate. However, these data counter the forecasts of those studying and analyzing these indexes, as well as with those citizens who perceived a different impact on the streets.
Index release of the Consumer Price Index is awaited month after month to know the official inflation figure. Analysts expect an upward rebound after what was reported in May.
Particularly, the prices of food and beverages have been dropping, one of the most important items of the CPI, but some services, such as telecommunications, prepaid services have been above average in recent months, and in June the impact of gas and electricity tariffs was quite important. At the Economic and Social Studies Center Scalabrini Ortiz, known as CISO, we have been insisting a lot on the inflationary inertia. In our opinion, the inertial elements have not been concretely attacked yet. There are many variables that are still fully indexed to past inflation. They are slowing down because inflation has been falling, but as this trend reverses, they will have more weight.
Making a revisionism and projecting in the short or medium term, the analyst understands that the government does not have much to celebrate in terms of the national economic data.
We are at a similar level to what it was in 2023, or at least the first half of that year. We just have to add the brutal recession we're going through, an initial devaluation that skyrocketed prices a lot, but then an anchor. We have been talking about Caputo's exchange anchor to stabilize prices. That is true, but in turn, it generates noise in the financial market, in the exchange market. There are many expectations of a new devaluation because this exchange rate is not sustainable to accumulate reserves, or at least it isn't the one expected by the agro-exporting companies to start liquidating a great part of the gross harvest. So there is a whole noise that triggers expectations of devaluation and that the exchange gaps will go up, and that starts pressing future prices.
On the streets, those living in the country detect that the prices of food and services continue to rise, in general terms.
I had a friend who lived here a year ago, and she told me that the prices were very low compared to Barcelona, where I am from, and I arrived and I saw a big change because I didn't find it cheap at all, and since I arrived in February the prices have soared a lot.
If nothing happens in 6 months and if the growth of prices continues, I mean of the basic stuff, I think things are going to get difficult.
We will have to wait for the official data to be provided next Friday, but on a day-to-day basis, there are no signs of improvement that would lead to a positive impact on the citizens of Argentina.
Santiago Corey, teleSUR, Buenos Aires.
Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. Like the story we will share now of the recent demonstrations in Valencia, capital of the state of Carabobo in Venezuela, in support of President Nicolás Maduro. Don't go away, we'll be right back. Welcome back. In the United States, more than two-thirds of the voting population believes that President Joe Biden should not seek re-election and drop out of the race for re-election. A survey of the voting population revealed that 56% of Democrat voters and 67% of citizens in general believe that the current president of the country, Joe Biden, should withdraw from the electoral race and not seek re-election. Among Democrat voters, 4 out of 10 encourage him to continue. However, more than 70% of independent voters consider necessary to win the White House, according to experts, believe that Biden should step aside and allow his Vice President Kamala Harris to lead the presidential ticket. This poll was conducted July 5 and 9th among more than 2,400 American adults with 2% margin of error. Also, in the United States House of Representatives on Wednesday passed a bill requiring voters to present proof of citizenship to exercise their right to vote in the upcoming presidential elections on November 5, 2024. After being approved with 221 votes in favor and 198 against, the measure prevents non-citizens from voting and would also require most people to have a passport in order to register and vote. According to State Department data, only 48% of the population has a passport. The so-called SAFE law is passed even though it is illegal, since under current U.S. law, only citizens can vote in federal elections, but the National Voter Registration Act of 1993 prohibits the state from confirming citizenship status. At least 150 Peruvian National Police and Army personnel are under investigation for human rights violations during anti-government demonstrations in December 2022 and March 2023. The prosecutor's office is handling the case of more than 267 victims of police repression of social protest against the government of Dina Boluarte, formalized in 18 preparatory investigations to officials for aggravated injuries. Amid the demonstrations demanding the advancement of presidential elections, 49 deaths were counted due to the actions of law enforcement. In Colombia, former paramilitary Salvatore Mancuso made his first public appearance after his release, making statements about his plans now that he is a peace manager for the government of President Gustavo Petro. Mancuso clarified that his activities as a peace promoter will begin on Thursday, for which he will meet with Peace Commissioner Oti Patiño. At the same time that a meeting with the Colombian president is expected to take place, in which Mancuso will request the participation of the former commander of the Gulf Clan, Dairo Antonio Usuga David, also known as Otoniel, detained in the United States to join the activities in the context of the total peace policy. Mancuso is also waiting for the Colombian head of state to give the order for the meeting to take place.
Today they are all financed by the same legal and illegal economies. Today they all control territories with the same modus operandi. The social orders that we create in the zones continue to be the same. The management that they give to them continues to be the same. So there are certain variants, of course, situations that have changed and that it is necessary to work with the national government. with the Office of the High Commissioner and with those who are in charge of these negotiations, so that these facts and these situations are dismantled and the conflict does not be repeated. But that is where we are heading.
Likewise, Salvatore Mancuso explained that 70% of the violence in Colombia is generated by non-rebel armed groups.
I am absolutely convinced that in Colombia we can achieve peace. I observe today with concern that we have only one armed conflict that has been dedicated to negotiate with the rebels, but the non-rebels have been left aside, and the non-rebels represent 70% of the actors that control the territories in Colombia today. Which means that 70% of the violence is generated by these non-rebel actors.
Palestinian social organizations denounced the Israeli occupation forces for the extermination of more than 500 entire families since October 7th. A report by the Gaza Civil Defense Documentation and Monitoring Committee stated that they continue to work on updating the data despite the bombardments. According to the Gaza Health Ministry, the occupation forces carry out daily massacres against civilian targets, resulting in dozens of martyrs and wounded, which puts the number of civilians killed at over 38,345, mostly women and children. In Palestine, Israeli occupation forces committed 2 new massacres against families in the Gaza Strip during the last 24 hours. Health authorities reported that at least 50 civilians were killed, while 54 others were wounded after the Tel Aviv regime bombardments. Meanwhile, ambulance teams are carrying out rescue work to find more victims and bodies trapped under the rubble. Since October 7, 2023, the number of victims killed has increased to 38,345, most of them being women and children. We have a final short break coming up before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. The President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, does not rule out the possible creation of a parliament of the BRICS. During the 10th Parliamentary Forum of the BRICS countries, the President assured that this idea may become a reality in the future, given that the bloc does not yet have an institutionalized structure. He also emphasized the importance of the BRICS as a key element of the emerging multipolar world order based on the principles of integration, impartiality, and equity on which the member countries agree.
There is increasing pressure on all those who have a position of their own. Contrary to the principles of international law, coercion, unilateral sanctions, selective application of trade rules, and blackmail are being used. There are also attempts to limit direct contacts between legislators, which contradicts the principle of free inter-parliamentary cooperation.
The Russian president stressed the need for the Union of Nations to consolidate security and global harmony.
I am convinced that acting together, in a united manner, we will be able to achieve the maximum implementation of the economic, investment, technological, and human potential of our countries, strengthen the constructive influence of the BRICS in global processes, make the world we live in safer and much more harmonious.
In Kenya, in the midst of popular protest, President William Ruto dismissed all members of his government cabinet and the Attorney General of the nation. The decision comes after several weeks of demonstrations in rejection of a tax increase and in demand of the immediate resignation of the African president. In turn, the head of state detailed that ministerial matters will be coordinated by principal secretaries until a definitive cabinet is drawn up, with the exception of the vice presidency and the first secretary, following consultations in which all sectors participated. On Wednesday, Colombia fans celebrated having advanced to the final of the Copa America after defeating Uruguay. Colombians are looking to take home their second trophy in the history of the event, as the nation will play on Sunday its third Copa America final in history after the editions of the 1975, where they were runner-ups, and of 2001, where they both hosted the event and emerged as champions. It will be the first time that Colombia faces Argentina in a final match, while on official games between them, the Argentinians have won 26 out of 35 matches, in addition to 8 draws. It must be emphasized that their last clash in a major tournament took place at the 2022 FIFA World Cup, resulting in victory for Argentina. On the other hand, in England, the fans celebrated the victory against the Netherlands and their participation in their second UEFA Euro Cup 2024 final. It should be noted that since the inception in 1960 of this tournament, the English have not won a single European championship. Precisely, England reached this stage in the 2021 tournament when they lost to Italy, and on Sunday they will face Spain, who is by far the best team of the event and aims to get its fourth title and being the team with the all-time most wins in the Continental Championship. We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok as well. For Telesur English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.